I want to jump right into this discussion because I've heard various speakers opining on the importance of the services sector. And since I don't have the economics knowledge of my colleague Navin, I'm going to keep it quite simple and refer to a concept which I think we would all have heard about before. Growth in the services sector has long been seen as a key indicator of a country's economic progress. And if we think back to our econ classes in high school, we learned about the three sectors of the economy. The primary sector, which makes direct use of natural resources by extracting raw materials. The manufacturing or secondary sector, which creates finished, tangible products, and the tertiary or services sector of the economy, which involves the transport, distribution, and sale of goods produced in the secondary economy, as well as unrelated actions or work that is produced, traded, bought, or sold, and eventually consumed. We were taught then that as a country develops, a greater proportion of its national income is derived from the services sector. In fact, services make up 71% of GDP in high-income countries today, compared to 39% of GDP in low-income countries. Some economists who remain faithful to the principles of this model have since added a fourth quaternary sector involving economic activity from intellectual or knowledge-based services, or even a fifth quinary sector linked to the work of government, nonprofits, and policymakers. And I had to check the pronunciation of the words quaternary and quinary before I got here. Trust I've got them right. For many years, the model provided a useful construct for explaining economic growth and development. However, what should be clear by now is that economic development is not a linear process, and each country's path to growth is different. Nevertheless, there can be no doubt that expansion of the services sector continues to provide a magnificent opportunity for developing countries to take mokojumbe steps ahead to improved economic outcomes by leveraging knowledge, skills, and technology. And when developing countries begin to excel at trading in services internationally, they can unlock vast new economic potential untethered by limitations in the volume of natural resources, the scale of production, or even logistical challenges. So what do we know about the services sector in Latin America and the Caribbean? According to World Bank data, the services sector was employing 64.6% of the total workforce in 2019 across Latin America and the Caribbean, LAC. Services exports accounted for 3.6% of GDP and 15% of total LAC exports. Fast forward post-pandemic, and the services sector has mostly recovered, continuing to employ around 64% of the workforce, with services exports now 2.9% of GDP and 11% of total LAC exports. In the Caribbean, services have a larger impact in our economies, employing some 70% of the workforce and representing 9% of GDP and 29% of total exports. A closer look reveals that much of LAC still specializes in traditional services, such as tourism and freight. In the Caribbean specifically, services exports primarily relate to mature industries with tourism and travel accounting for approximately 80% of services exports. Meanwhile, there remain significant untapped opportunities in perhaps less traditional and sometimes more dynamic areas, such as charges for the use of intellectual property, digital publishing, film and animation, data lakes and data cooperatives, audio and video production, streaming services for TV and radio, the use of TV white spaces to provide digital services to rural and remote communities, computer programming, no-code, low-code training, management consulting, insurance, pension, and other financial services, cybersecurity and other computer and information services, including digital wallets, e-currencies, and payment gateways. While a 2021 World Bank study found that education and health services were perhaps less traded internationally, these also represent a huge untapped potential opportunity. So let's take a quick look at a couple of countries where the services industry is performing very well. Both have made viable claims to being the Silicon Valley of Latin America. We'll begin with Uruguay, where the global services sector and trading exports totaled US $5.735 million in 2021. Exports of non-traditional services in Uruguay grew at a fast pace over the last decade, the fastest pace in LAC. The sector employs 27,000 people, 80% concentrated in activities related to software and corporate services. Considered a regional hub and a business platform for the Americas, the country has also been able to attract significant foreign direct investments, more generally due to the establishment of 12 free trade zones where no transit, property, VAT, or net income taxes are applied. There are minimal entry requirements for international investors. A highly educated population, 98.1% literacy rates, and preferential access to Brazil and Argentina markets due to the Mercosur trade agreement. Notably, after achieving a market value of $1.2 billion US in 2020, payment solution provider dLocal became the first Uruguayan unicorn, having worked with Amazon, Uber, and Netflix. But dLocal is just one of over 1,000 software development companies operating in Uruguay, generating almost $1 billion in exports and making this country of just 3.4 million people the #1 software exporter per capita in South America. Let's turn to the other example, Costa Rica. In 2021, value added to GDP from the services industry in Costa Rica was 66.9%, and in fact has been over 60% since 2009. The country's investment attraction approach is similar to Uruguay's and perhaps predates it, with the country having established a free trade zone which exempts companies making new investments from income tax, VAT, taxes on remittances abroad, export and import tariffs, and taxes payable to local governments, among others. Additionally, the 2021 law to attract workers and remote service providers of international character offers digital nomads earning US $3,000 a month, income tax exemptions, a 1-year visa extendable and which allows for multiple exits, duty-free importation of any equipment necessary for work, and 1 year's driver's license recognition. The country is well below the OECD average, that's a developed country average, in the Digital Services Trade Restrictiveness Index 2022, meaning that it has less restrictive policies for services export and trade than most countries worldwide. With its strong telecommunications infrastructure and data protection laws, a 97.8% literacy rate, and an emphasis on English language and technology training at the secondary school level, Costa Rica has been able to position itself as a key services provider in global value chains. According to CINDE, the country's investment promotions agency, Costa Rica is home to more than 150 companies that offer services such as call centers, BPO, digital technology, and design services. It was ranked third in Latin America in the Global Innovation Index in 2021, but even Costa Rica fell to 7th by 2022, given the competition in the market, and now ranks 68th out of 128 countries, even with all that I described. One might ask where Caribbean economies fall in the Global Innovation Index I just mentioned. Jamaica comes in at number 76, and Trinidad and Tobago at number 101. The main services exporters in the Caribbean are Jamaica, the Bahamas, and Antigua and Barbuda, with a contribution of services to GDP of 20%, 23%, and 48% respectively. Of course, much of this is due to tourism, as you may imagine. In April, Jamaica's tourism minister announced that Jamaica welcomed 3.3 million visitors and earned an estimated US $3.7 billion in 2022. And he added that this is the biggest and best winter season Jamaica has ever had in the history of tourism. Of course, that makes it difficult for people like me to just go home and see my mother. But it's clear that we know how to do tourism in this region. And we understand that the sector remains extremely vulnerable to shocks, such as economic downturns, crime waves, and disease outbreaks, which might affect travel. So when we look to the future of the services sector, it may be time to explore some of those industries with untapped potential that I mentioned earlier. What might a roadmap for Trinidad and Tobago and other Caribbean countries seeking to advance their services sectors look like? Here I offer a few actions for consideration. First, supply chain logistics and connectivity could be strengthened. Connectivity, both physical and via digital infrastructure, remains important to our country's competitiveness in the services sector. In terms of logistics, while there are a number of active ports serving the manufacturing and oil and gas sectors, TNT's capacity and resources would have to significantly increase in order to scale up the provision of transportation and logistics services. Initiatives such as the PPP, soon to be tendered for the Port of Spain, will assist, as will the implementation of a port community system. The PCS will provide the interoperability between the trade and logistics systems that is currently the missing link to close the communication loop and optimize the digital trade facilitation architecture in Trinidad and Tobago. By centralizing data and streamlining workflows, a PCS stimulates collaboration, improves logistics efficiencies, and helps reduce the time, cost, and complexity of port operations. It also improves traceability and transparency in the supply chain, contributing to the control of cargo at ports of entry. In terms of digital connectivity, Trinidad and Tobago has attained a relatively high level with 79% of the population using the internet, slightly higher than the LAC average of 76%, but below the 90% reported for high-income countries. On mobile subscriptions, Trinidad and Tobago outperforms the region and high-income countries with 131 subscriptions per 100 people, compared to 107 in LAC and 124 in high-income countries. However, TNT lags the region on secure internet servers per million, with only 313 compared to 1,969 in LAC and more than 60,000 per million in high-income countries. There are 1,947 secure internet servers per million in Uruguay and 1,312 in Costa Rica. In order to expand trading services such as financial and cybersecurity services and software development, these digital connectivity gaps will have to be addressed. Second, opportunities in new fast-growing industries within the services sector are rapidly being pursued by other countries. In order to get a piece of the pie, so to speak, TNT will have to aggressively ramp up its production in these areas. The nature of trading services is evolving thanks to technological change and greater connectivity, and services are being delivered increasingly through no-contact digital channels, which offer a significant opportunity to access new markets. With literacy rates in the same bracket as Costa Rica and Uruguay, and a primarily English-speaking population, Trinidad and Tobago offers a viable alternative for global services, investment, and trade. One success story already in progress is the Tamana Technology and Animation Production Factory, the TAP Factory, which is a commercial animation studio established at UTT with support from IDB Lab. The TAP Factory leverages local talent developed right here in TNT through UTT's Bachelor in Fine Arts program that offers a specialization in animation, music technology, and game art. The TAP Factory was originally set up to support small animation studios in taking advantage of a fast-growing animation industry, which was valued at US $394 billion in 2022 and is projected to grow to US $528 billion by 2030. We are extremely gratified to see that given the marketing of Trinidad and Tobago's investment in animation training, as well as the important work of their technical lead, Camille Abrahams, who is the founder of Anime Carib, the TAP Factory itself has successfully entered into a number of contracts for the delivery of animation services to studios in the Philippines and North America. TAP's work has created contract opportunities for animation graduates, many of whom are on the spectrum, to engage in the export of services, and from all indications, the sector is poised to further accelerate and grow. So it can be done. Third, it will be important to strengthen the ecosystem for digital firms. The IDB is working with the Ministry of Digital Transformation to develop mechanisms to support the work of local software developers and engage with digital firms in Trinidad and Tobago. Enabling mechanisms for digital firms ensure that knowledge and technology transfer is taking place, that there's digital talent available, digital infrastructure is in place. Firms recognize the importance of long-term investments in innovation, and that means research and development. Firms are able to access risk capital. There is a digitally friendly regulatory and institutional environment, which includes the use of instruments such as regulatory sandboxes to support a safe environment for prototyping, testing, proving and demonstrating solutions and applications. And BSOs, incubators, and accelerators have the technical expertise to support the growth of digital business models. Support of this nature for companies in Trinidad and Tobago that are innovating is currently available under the IDB Lab and European Union financed Shaping the Future of Innovation program, which is being executed by Cariri. Firms are able to compete for financing under the program, which is now about to announce its third call for applications. Many of the successful applicants to date have centered their proposals on the use of technology to drive service delivery, expand markets, and accelerate growth. And I would encourage all innovating service companies to apply. Also, again with support from IDB Lab, technology-driven companies across the region are able to participate in a specialized business acceleration program delivered by DMZ, a global leader in this space, through our partners at Tech Beach. Both public and private actors will have to contribute to building and strengthening the enabling environment, something I'm sure we'll speak more about at the upcoming AmCham Tech Hub Island Summit. And this is a shameless plug for an upcoming event in which I hope you'll all participate. And it's scheduled for June 29 to the 30th, 2023. And we'll be talking a lot there about the enabling environment and strengthening the ecosystem for digital firms. Finally, I'd like to mention how critical it is to improve local capacity. In order to ensure Trinidad and Tobago is ready to expand its trading services, programs such as Going Global, which will work with services firms to ensure they are trained and ready for the market, are essential. And so I applaud TTCSI and its partners, such as the Ministry of Trade and Industry, for the work that you're doing in this area, as well as on data collection and joint marketing. And I expect I'll have to call you M and 007 going forward. In addition, building local capacity extends beyond skills development to finalizing local standards, such as those related to the labeling of goods, the circular economy, refrigeration and air conditioning, and good governance of organizations, to name just a few. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a great privilege to share a few of my thoughts with you this evening. We know that Trinidad and Tobago still has much to offer the world in terms of its creativity and capacity for innovation in various fields, and the services sector is no different. Rest assured that the IDB and indeed other development partners will continue to collaborate to support these advances. Congratulations again for this initiative launched this evening, and I look forward to continuing to work together on these important matters. Have a great evening.